I'll just say one more thing about Ross and Larry in terms of their work and my work. With regard to Ross Bleckner and my work, one of the things that I was coming to understand was oil media as a specific characteristic material. And one of the things that I was able to pick up from Ross was certain characteristics of oil media in terms of process, that oil really reads differently than acrylic paint. And if you're talking about illusionism as a quality in painting, and you're not disavowing illusionism, oil paint really is the medium of illusionism to some extent. And Ross understood that very well. And I have to say that I was overly seduced by that aspect of Ross's painting, and it's something that I've been working against subsequently. Glazing. I don't believe in overworking a painting at all. I try to find strategies that do just the opposite. I feel like you can kill a painting by going back into it. Ross, it was the opposite. Overworking was his way of emancipating himself. So some of those things. With regard to Poons, I was interested, first of all, in the rigor of his optical work. I was interested in how it responded to the moment of the 60s in terms of my own childhood, a kind of open-eyed idealism. It was such an expansive time for me. I was fortunate enough to go to progressive schools. My parents were very progressive and liberal and open-minded, and I really felt that in the art of the 60s, and to me Larry kind of stood for that. His later work can seem, almost claustrophobic in its density, but I liked the process aspect of it. I liked the material aspect of it. I liked the fact that the gravitational force of the picture plane was the catalyst for what was happening. I liked the engagement with paint as paint. And I also just, the story really got to me of kind of who he was and what he had done. When we were up at his barn in East Durham, we were looking at, his vintage cafe racer. That's what he races, these vintage class motorcycles, single cylinder, 500cc, he races the whole circuit from Daytona and elsewhere. But he also, in his garage, had, a sports car that was in a state of disrepair, that, was never going to be put back together again. But in New York, his place, it used to be William Rubin's loft, and it was one of the first spaces designed by the architect Richard Meyer. And it's a real kind of time capsule, He has what he calls the painting cave, and it's literally like Carlsbad Cavern, stalactites of acrylic hanging from 2x4s and plastic sheeting. And I remember going in there, and there was so much plastic sheeting on the floor. He lays down this plastic sheeting, and then you get out the 5-gallon, golden paint buckets. But walking on the floor, it literally was like, and you could hear the air coming out of it, and all of that. It really killed me to think about the years of this kind of activity and this kind of intensity, but also just the wildness of it. That within the support structure of the New York art community and a kind of painting establishment, as represented by the Rubin family, Andre Emmerich, later Salinger O'Reilly, you had somebody who was this kind of free spirit renegade operating within those confines, and so different really than Nolan and Olitsky when you finally come down to it. And those three painters have always been related to each other. I also love those two other painters, but I realize what's so different. And one of the things you're going to encounter when you meet Larry is that he is in that present tense. He is where he is now. He doesn't give a damn about, where he's been. Okay, who's next?